In a faraway kingdom ruled a wicked king, known for his harsh laws. Among his decrees was the cruelest of all. Any child born with a deformity would be killed and their parents banished. In this kingdom, a couple desperately longed for a child. They prayed and waited for years, their hearts heavy with a mix of hope and despair. They spent all their money seeking help from various healers in their quest for a child. Abba, the wife, became depressed after following every instruction given to her without success. Her husband, Fifi, always comforted her during these difficult times, hopeful that one day their prayers would be answered. After many years of waiting, their prayers were finally answered. Abba became pregnant, and the couple was overjoyed. However, Abba's pregnancy was difficult, leaving her mostly weak and bedridden. One fateful night, Abba experienced strong pains and told her husband to fetch the village midwife, Awo Ya. After many hours of labor, their baby girl was born. She was beautiful, but had only one hand. Fearful of the king's law, the couple decided to keep their daughter's condition a secret to protect her. They begged Awo Ya to keep the secret, and she reluctantly agreed in exchange for a piece of farmland. Fifi and Abba accepted their daughter's condition and asked Awo Ya to give them some time to adjust. The girl grew up hidden from the public eye. She learned to play, laugh, and love in the shadows of her parents' home. She was always covered in clothes and only came out when everyone else in the village had gone to the fields to get some fresh air outside her compound. Despite their efforts, whispers began to spread in the village. People grew suspicious of the couple's secretive ways, questioning why their daughter was always indoors and never played with other children. Fifi and Abba would often respond by saying their daughter was very shy. The rumors eventually reached the king's ears. Awo Ya, unable to keep the secret any longer, visited the king one hot afternoon and disclosed the truth. The king ordered an investigation, determined to uncover the truth, and promised Awo Ya a huge reward if her claims were verified. The king set a date for every villager to show their hands, coinciding with a major festival. The couple knew they had little time left to protect their daughter. They were very worried and considered every possible means to safeguard her. Aku, their daughter, had grown into a beautiful young lady. Her beauty was unmatched, but her heart was heavy with sorrow. No one had seen her true appearance because she was always covered in clothes. Aku found solace by the river, where she often went to cry. Her tears were her only comfort in the face of impending doom. The river god had been watching Aku visit the riverside often, always in tears. One day, he approached her and gently asked why she was so sad. Aku, feeling a mix of relief and despair, told him everything. She explained that she was born with only one hand and that the king's cruel decree meant she could be killed because of it. The river god, touched by her kindness and moved by her sorrow, decided to help Aku. He couldn't stand to see such a good-hearted girl suffer any longer. The river god, with a touch of magic, gave Aku a new hand, perfectly matching her other one, adorned with gold rings that shone brightly. Words could not describe how she felt. Aku was incredibly grateful to the river god. Overjoyed and grateful, Aku returned home, amazed by the miracle that had saved her. She narrated all that had happened to her parents, and they decided to keep this miracle a secret. The day finally came when all the villagers had to show their hands. The air was tense and everyone was on edge. The sun was shining brightly, casting long shadows on the ground. Aku stood at the end of the line, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. As she looked around, she saw the worried faces of the other villagers. Some avoided her gaze, while others gave her small, encouraging smiles. Whispers filled the air, full of doubt and curiosity. Aku's hands trembled as she held the edges of her dress. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, but it was hard. The king sat on his throne, watching everyone closely, looking for any signs of deformity. When it was Aku's turn, she stepped forward slowly, each step echoing in the silent square. The king's eyes locked onto her, and for a moment it felt like time stopped. The villagers held their breath, and the only sound was the faint murmur of the river in the distance. Aku extended her hand, the new one given by the river god, glinting in the sunlight. The gold ring sparkled, giving her a bit of hope. The king examined her closely, his face stern but with a hint of confusion in his eyes. The silence was deafening. Every second stretched into an eternity. The king's gaze shifted from her hand to her face, searching for the truth. But all he saw was a girl who, despite everything, stood tall and unyielding, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. As the tension reached its peak, the king, unable to find any fault, looked up, his expression a mix of frustration and bewilderment. The villagers, who had been holding their breath, exhaled in collective relief. But the relief was tinged with an uneasy silence, the realization that the truth was still shrouded in mystery. Aku's heart, weighed down by fear, felt a little lighter. She knew the danger wasn't completely gone, but for now there was a spark of hope, a small light in the darkness. Her parents, Fifi and Abba, were relieved but knew they still had to be cautious. The king was not easily fooled. Aku visited the river again, thanking the river god for his help. She shared her fears with him, seeking his counsel. The river god advised her to use her new hand for good, to show the king the power of kindness and compassion. Aku began helping others in the village, using her hand to heal, comfort, and support those in need. Her acts of kindness won the hearts of the villagers. They began to see her as a blessing, not a curse. The village started changing. People became kinder and more supportive of each other, inspired by Aku's example. Reports of Aku's acts of kindness spread throughout the kingdom, eventually reaching the king's ears. The king was confused and puzzled. How could a girl he intended to kill be responsible for so much good? This didn't make sense to him. He decided he needed to see her for himself. One day, the king ordered Aku to come to the palace. When she arrived, he demanded to know the source of her strength and kindness. The king, stern and curious, looked at her with piercing eyes. Aku, though nervous, stood bravely before the king. She took a deep breath and began to tell her story. She spoke about the river god who had seen her sorrow and granted her a miracle. She talked about kindness, love, and the power of compassion, hoping the king would understand. The king listened to Aku's words. As she spoke, something inside him started to change. He reflected on his own cruel laws and the pain they had caused his people. The king began to question his own heart. Could it be that his harshness was wrong? That night, the king couldn't sleep. He wrestled with his thoughts, tossing and turning in his bed. He dreamt of a kingdom not ruled by fear, but by love and kindness. He imagined a place where people lived happily, without the shadow of his cruel decrees hanging over them. In the morning, the king made a decision. He gathered his advisors and the people of the kingdom and made an important announcement. He declared the end of his cruel laws and promised to rule with fairness and love. The king vowed to change and lead with compassion. The news spread quickly, and the kingdom began to transform. People rejoiced, and the heavy atmosphere of fear and oppression started to lift. The villagers celebrated, their hearts light and full of hope. The story of Aku and the king spread far and wide. It taught everyone that kindness and compassion could overcome even the harshest of laws and bring about true change. Through Aku's bravery and the king's transformation, the kingdom learned that love and kindness were the strongest powers of all. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to comment, like and share. Subscribe for more interesting videos.